just a normal human being, learning along with you to live with generalized anxiety. In this episode, we'll talk about the first steps that I took to help manage my anxiety. Step 1. I accepted that this is a journey and not a sprint. For me, I thought, I'll just take a Zoloft, and within a few days I'll be feeling great. Boy, was I wrong. 15 years later, I'm still learning to live with anxiety. But it wasn't until the last year that I really started to dive into how my brain works and its relationship with anxiety. Creating new neural pathways takes time, several weeks to months to years even. But it can help your brain address triggers with more confidence so you feel less anxious overall, which is the purpose of this podcast. Consistency is also key. Just like going to the gym for one day won't give you six-pack abs, or one meditation exercise may not make a lasting impact. Keep going. Little by little, you will get there. With time and repetition, lasting change is possible. So now that I've accepted that this is not going to be a one and done and an easy quick fix, I moved on to step 2. I went and got a physical. Getting a full physical from a primary care physician can ensure that the symptoms that I'm feeling were anxiety and not something deeper. Studies recently have shown that nearly 8 million people check into the ER annually thinking they're having some sort of cardiac massive distress. 40% of those people are actually having a panic attack, and only 1 in 2 of them are actually treated on site. Studies have also shown that people are often not diagnosed with panic attacks because the hospital, in particular the ER, is not trained or equipped to diagnose mental health conditions. So there are 2 major problems with this approach. Only a third of Americans have and see a primary care provider regularly. Fewer Americans had a primary care provider in 2022 than in 2015. You have to make sure your body is running at its optimal health before you can attempt to reprogram or train your brain. One of the things that I learned, which was a problem for me, was gut health plays a significant role in managing anxiety. The gut and brain are closely connected through the gut-brain axis, which I'd never heard of, and research suggests that an imbalance in gut microbiome can influence mood and mental health. Maintaining a healthy gut through balanced diet, probiotics, and stress management techniques can help reduce anxiety symptoms. Your gut and your brain are in constant two-way communication. Your gut microbiome creates neurotransmitters to regulate brain activity, calm anxiety, and boost your mood. It's essential to consult with a healthcare professional for personalized advice. They'll also look at things like your thyroid, blood sugar, and any vitamin or mineral deficiencies that may be contributing to the anxiousness that you're experiencing. On to step 3. Seek out therapy. Finding the right therapist is key. You may need to seek out a psychiatrist to look at pharmaceutical options to help manage your anxiety, depending on how much it's interfering with your daily life. For me, though, I wish this would have been a last resort, instead of jumping right to medication. One thing I truly didn't understand was the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist and a therapist. I learned that a psychiatrist tend to only use talk and behavioral therapy, and most states do not allow them to prescribe medications because they're not trained in medical care. Psychiatrists are medical doctors, and thus can prescribe medication. For me, I started with a psychiatrist because I was already taking medication that was prescribed by a primary care physician. Once we talked about the medication I'm on and my goal of eventually coming off the medication, we set up a plan. Part of that plan was adding in bi-weekly sessions with a psychologist. For me, this wasn't just about talk therapy. I wanted to dive headfirst and try everything I could to see what worked best for me. This included techniques like electrotherapy, vagus nerve exercises, meditation, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which was really cool, and a lot of other techniques. Let me know in the comments below if you've tried any of these or if you'd like to learn more about my experiences with them. My therapy is ongoing. I still meet with and will continue to see my psychologist on a regular basis. One thing to keep in mind is that you may not click with the first mental health professional you come in contact with. Don't let that discourage you from seeking out therapy. In order for therapy to truly be effective, you have to have a solid, trusting relationship with your mental health professional. We received a great question from one of our listeners, Kyle, on Instagram. Kyle asked, "What do you look for in a therapist? How do you know you've found a good one?" Here are some things to consider when I was looking for a therapist. This is a no-brainer, but qualifications. Make sure they have the necessary credentials and license to practice in your area. Next, I looked for experience. Look for an experienced therapist treating the specific issues you're dealing with. Just like a medical specialist, there are therapists who specialize in specific areas of mental health. This includes specializing in different techniques to help get you to the root cause. Empathy. A good mental health professional should be understanding, empathetic, and non-judgmental. Communication. They should be able to communicate effectively and make you feel comfortable expressing yourself. Just because they're a therapist doesn't mean they'll communicate the way that you need them to. Compatibility. Find someone you feel comfortable talking to, and someone you truly trust. I also look for someone who had an evidence-based approach to their therapy. I look for a mental health professional who had evidence-based techniques and treatments. Your therapist should also provide you with homework or research to help you when you're not in session. Flexibility. This was really important for me. Consider their availability and their willingness to accommodate your schedule. This was another big one for me too. Cross-cultural sensitivity. Self-awareness and a commitment to diversity exemplify an effective psychologist. A cookie-cutter approach to diagnosing and treating clients doesn't work in today's society. Socially conscious psychologists understand social constructs, such as race, power, privilege, and systemic oppression. They recognize and confront their own biases, while striving to be fair, just, equitable, and inclusive in their own practice. I look for a therapist that would provide feedback. A good psychologist or therapist should provide feedback and involve you in the therapy process. Like I said earlier, my therapist often provides homework for me, which I find super helpful at keeping me on track in between sessions. Overall, it's essential for you to find a mental health professional who you feel is the right fit for you and your personal needs. Step 4. Seek out information. The more I learned about anxiety, the less I feared it. I turned to several books and podcasts. These were all great tools in my anxiety toolkit that I reference regularly. Step 5. Get moving. Movement is medicine. One sobering study I found showed that people with anxiety tend to be more sedentary and do less intense forms of physical activity, if any at all. The study found that only 1/5 of the sample followed public health guidelines regarding regular physical activity. I will link to the study in the show notes below. I found the information fascinating. It also stated that 53% of adults say they feel good about themselves after exercising. 35% say it put them in a better mood, and 30% say they feel less stressed after physical activity. But fewer than half of adults say they exercise to manage stress. 39% say they actually skipped exercise or physical activity in the past month when they're feeling stressed. Engaging in exercise actually helps divert your attention from the very thing that you're anxious about. Moving your body decreases muscle tension, lowering the body's contribution to feeling anxious. Getting your heart rate up changes your brain's chemistry, increasing the availability of important anti-anxiety neurochemicals, including things like serotonin. Exercise activates the frontal regions of the brain responsible for executive function, which helps control the amygdala, a reactive system to real or imagined threats to our survival. Exercising regularly builds up resources that bolster resilience against stormy emotions. This is one more tool in your anxiety toolkit. I find that if I skip a few days of exercise, I feel way more anxious in the days that follow. It is a critical step in my mental health treatment. We've covered a lot today in this podcast. Tell me what you think about what we've covered. Do you do any of these things yourself as part of your mental health routine? Leave a comment below. Share what works best for you and any additional steps you took to better your mental health. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for future notifications. If you would like to be a part of one of these podcasts in the future, shoot me a message at thenormalmindpodcast@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at thenormalmindpodcast. Thanks again, and thanks for listening.